framing on the
presentation, yes.
Okay, so sorry. Interesting.
The machine are highly concentrated on the Severian foods of Italy. In this area, they provide useful spatial continuity and resolution.
I apologize for. Okay, so during this the first day of the workshop, I extracted some slides from the presentation. So one of the interesting comments was by Nick Fleming concerning the archaeological significance and not only the archaeological but also the sea level significance of the archaeological methods, and not only the fish tanks but also slipways and docks and other structure. Okay, and one of the remarkable, this one comments by the presentation by Eleni, Colaidi and Nikos Mortas concerning the fish tanks. And as reliable observer indicators that many existing fish tanks have been recently surveyed during the first and last decades. Sorry, I have some problem with the microphone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
No.
No. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry. Can you hear me, David?
Yes.
Okay. One of the comments concerning the fish tanks in Crete, that with respect to past knowledge on the archaeology of Crete, have been selected 17 fish tanks. And reliable sea level markers, part are rock cut, part are being constructed along the coast, and the depth of the fish tanks is all located about 1.2 meters, so show a relative sea level change of about 1.2 meters. So it's a new improvement of the scientific knowledge on Crete. And concerning the different sea level indicators and fish tanks, we discussed the channel system as the most reliable sea level indicators, and their engineering of these channels with the horizontal stones, the posts, the slab, the upper slab, the threshold, the gate with the holes for let the water exit and enter in the basins and preventing the escape of fish. And the importance that the top of the sluice gates coincide with the elevation of the lowest level of footwall in most of the fish tanks. There are many fish tanks in the Mediterranean that displays these features. We have seen in Falsarna, in Sidi Daoud, in Tunisia, Lambus in Cyprus, Ventotene in Italy, and Torrastur in Italy, as well as the coast nearby Santa Severa, which displays several interesting fish tanks, and the latest one is probably that one presenter was presented by Barbaro this morning near Campo di Mare, the circular one that you have seen in the presentation. This is, for me, is still an unknown fish tank, if it is a fish tank. Sorry, I skipped this one. The relevant point that the historical sources are very important to define the architectural system and to interpret the architectural system of the fish tanks. The late authors like Columella and Varro and Juvenale left several interesting information on the constructional elements and features of the fish tanks that can be now seen in the fish tank. So there is a highly correspondence between the historical sources and the observations that we have, many of us, in the last years. This is an example in Fosse Guardiole, nearby Santa Severa, with this fish tank with the sluice gates, the exterior walls to protect the basins, the crepido, some features are interesting. So recent findings discovered a sluice gate in marble, which is completely new information on the fish tanks, because we know that the sluice gates were built in stone or in lead and not in marble. So this is a new, probably a new feature discovered in the fish tank. And another important issue has been the technical construction of the fish tanks. So Leopoldo Franco shows the technical part of the fish tanks and the harbor, so the material, how they have been constructed, the technical features, the methods, the type of cement the Romans used to build not only harbors and breakwaters but also the fish tanks. And another important point arising from the presentation was the misinterpretation of the fish tanks. In some cases, quarries have been misinterpreted as fish tanks. And this is important because although they can display some similar features like channels or cuttings, the relationship with the sea level, the capacity level, is completely different, because there is not a functionality for the sea level, but they don't display functional relation with sea level unless they want to flood the quarry for another use in time. And for example, this is another example of a misinterpretation of fish tanks. This is the fish tank of Sperlonga, thank you, Flavio, which is connected to, which is fed by fresh water, is not connected with the open sea. So when we interpret the sea level change from the fish tank, we have to be careful concerning the functionality of the structure. This is another example of a possible quarry which has been in time used as a fish tank, or just this is a quarry which has been flooded by continuous sea level rise. This is time in Lebanon. And another important point is the new possibility that technology give us to study the fish tanks. This is an aerial photogrammetry of the fish tank that allow us to measure, to visualize the feature of the fish tanks as well as other coastal construction to facilitate the interpretation and use of these structures. So that help better than the simple scheme like this one, which is very useful, but compared with the previous one, with this, is completely different. So next studies, my suggestion is to encourage this kind of surveys of the fish tank, which are more precise and facilitate interpretations. So another important use of the fish tanks is to study the current land deformation in active tectonics and volcanic zones. We are in the Phlegraean fields near Naples. Claudia Caporizzo and the team of the University of Martello in Naples studied the contribution to the fault activity and volcanic activity on inferred from the elevation of the fish tanks. On the regional scale, the fish tank of Mediterranean, in the presentation by Lambert, show the different tectonic areas in the Mediterranean, from the stable coast of the Mediterranean to the unstable coast, for example, of part of Crete, or North Africa, or other part of the Mediterranean. So we can associate the current position of the fish tanks to the tectonic rates, the vertical tectonic rates of different areas in the Mediterranean. This is part of the presentation by Eleni Colletti on Crete. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So I think that probably Kurt, you want to say something?
Thanks, Marco. Just a couple of comments at this stage. I think it's important that we talk about relative sea level and not forget about the relative part, because it's always the measurement of what the sea is doing relative to the local land. That's the important part. If we don't know what the land is doing, then our relative sea level may be quite accurate, but we can't relate it to what is happening on a broader scale. So keep that in mind when you talk about it. So when you say, for example, Eleni, that the Cretan data is the most precise fish tank data, I would ask the question, well, can you be sure that the tectonics are not variable at a somewhat larger rate? And the answer to that would be we don't really know, because we cannot extrapolate from the last 100 years what we know to 2,000 years. The tectonics behaves more in a more complex manner. So that's just a general comment, it's not a critique. I'm impressed by those results from Crete. And I recognize in this figure I probably should improve the error bars on those. I had put the large error bars on the assumption that there was a background seismic noise there that could be quite large. Then the comment on Nick Fleming's, my comment on response to Nick Fleming's comment, I'm very pleased that he is emphasizing the use of these other indicators. I think that's the only way we can expand our data set. I think the fish tank data set is probably limited, unless I'm totally wrong. but the important thing is that do we know the relationship of these other features to sea level with the same sort of precision as we do as we think we do for the fish tanks? And my reading of the literature is, and I'm not an archaeologist, remember that, is that the answer is probably no. There are more questions associated with slipways and other features. So the point I tried to emphasize the other day was that we can use the fish tanks as a calibrator for these other features. So we should look for the relationship between slipways and fish tanks in the same locality, in the same nearby locality, where we can assume that the tectonics and any perturbing oceanographic issues are fairly constant. And if we can do that and establish relationships between, let's say for example, the slipway is X centimeters above or below sea level, then we can use that information then to correct the slipways elsewhere to bring it up to true sea level. And I think that should be one of the emphasis for further work, to try and establish those relationships with much greater accuracy. I use the word accuracy and not precision, with greater accuracy than elsewhere. I think those were my two essential comments. I agree totally with Nick that when he says that the improvements that have occurred over the period of time, personally I don't think we're quite at the 5 to 10 centimeters levels yet, but I certainly hope to be able to see it in what's left of my lifetime.
Thank you, Kurt. Other comments?
Yes.
Any other comments?
Yes.
Any colleague?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Kurt. 2 points. First point, the measurements, the fish tanks of Crete are the most reliable sea level indicators for the Roman sea level. Why? Why? There are 17 fish tanks, all the known fish tanks on the island. There are all measurements, and I fully disagree with Marco that said that our representation is schematic. Marco is not schematic. We have snorkel there. We have made all the measurements one by one for all the fish tanks of Crete. So I do not compare, I never compare this photogrammetric plan you saw with our measurements, because they are real measurements. Please. The second point, Kurt, because you asked some things, you put a doubt to our measurements. There are 17 fish tanks. They are all measurements. All the functional features of fish tanks, channels, partition walls, entrances, everything. All measurements were corrected for tide at pressure at the time of the survey. Another point, and the most important, the channels of all the fish tanks, and the statistical sample is very, very good and very reliable. More than 50 channels all around Crete are at 1.25, between 1.2, 1.3. And this is consistent with the tidal notch that is incised on the rock cliff of the fish tank. This is an undoubted, please Marco, will you show the slide? The first one, please. This one, what shows this one? That the reliability of survey. All the fish tanks of Crete, the first one, this one, please. The fish tanks of Crete were controlled by seawater, their function. no fresh water in the fish tank, very important. Another thing, now we have to make, I think that it's time to make this distinguishment between rock-cut structures and built structures. When you have a rock-cut structure, the depths of the functional features are undoubted. It is very clear what to measure, Kurt. We measure the bottom of the channel, we measure the entrance, and this is undoubted. In the other slide, Marco, we have proved the consistency of measurements.
Which slide,
Please go ahead. The diagram.
This one?
No. This diagram, please. The green line, what shows the green line? The depth of the walkways and the sidewalks and all around the fish tanks. It is steadily above the entrances. The magenta, the pink color, what shows that the bottom of the floors of the fish tanks is below the sea level, everywhere, the mean sea level. The yellow line, what shows the bottom of the channel of the fish tanks, the rock-cut channel. I insist on this. And the blue line, what shows that all the entrances are at between 1.2, 1.3. And this, and in relation with the high water, the tide, in the micro-tidal environment of the Aegean, even if the higher high tide or the lowest low water, always the side walks were above the sea level. Okay, the other, I repeat the other point, the relationship between fish tanks, the channels of the fish tanks and the geomorphological indicators, because we prove that the channels were at the same level with the tidal nodes, and tidal nodes, I think that is an undoubted sea level indicator, or not. And the third point, what Kurt said, is the relationship between fish tanks and other archaeological sea level markers. The slipways of Crete, and David knows very well that, their seaward end is at the same elevation with the fish tanks. So they are very well documented, and I think that this should be taken seriously into account in your model, Kurt. Another point is about the protection of fish tanks, but if we discuss on this later, I talk about this later.
Can I just come back for a very quick comment? I don't disagree with your numbers, Ellen. You misunderstood what I'm trying to say. If you said that you've got the most precise Roman sea level for Crete, I would totally agree. But what happens in Crete is not the same what happens elsewhere.
Yes.
And that's the essential point I'm trying to make. So if you just simply insert for Crete, I don't question your data. I've never questioned that. So.
The same goes for Italy, for Tyrrhenian.
Of course.
See,
Yeah.
okay, we agree, we fully agree.
But we don't talk about
Mediterranean sea level, Roman sea level.
No, just let me finish. We don't say that the data from Severa, for example, is a Roman sea level in the sense that it's representative of all of even the Roman area. It is representative of this particular locality, and the challenge is how do we relate the one locality to another locality's results in order to get a global picture of what's happening in the Mediterranean as a whole. That's my message. I'm not questioning the data, I'm not an expert in the data part, I just read, I use what I understand from the literature. So don't get upset about it.
Thank you for the comments, Ruth and Delaney. I want to say something about the accuracy of the planning, because I consider these schematic plans. I'm not critical. This is perfect. It's very well done, Eleni. I just say that similar photogrammetric surveys help us and support and improve the analysis of the constructional feature and the basin, and because you can manage this data, this is digital data that you can manage through a GIS, for example, or through AutoCAD, for example, software, so you can take measures, volumes, cross-cut, cross-section, and so on, that you can do with this kind of plans. This is obvious, but this is perfect because you did, as any other colleagues, very detailed surveys of the fish tanks. So this is a very detailed plan, but these new technologies, like this one, will improve a lot the interpretations.
Yes, but this one is interpreted as fish tank.
Yeah, yes, okay. No, this is not a fish tank. We know this interpretation. Then is a fish tank, or this is a quarry, or not. This is another issue.
Okay, the other one,
Nicholas,
the schematic,
you're right.
Marco, the other one, the schematics, is important to understand the functionality of
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
The accurate measurements will presented in other schemes.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Both, I should say that both type of scheme plans are useful. This one because present the schematic part of the explain very well in detail the feature of spatial, a particular part of the fish tank, in this case the channel system. And this one is support the overview of the fish tanks, and you can use even for details. So it depends on the scale of the details you are looking at in fish tanks. So anyway, both are useful, but this is obviously a technological improvement with the past. Adjusting the former plans made by, for example, in the last two centuries ago, it's completely different. Okay, just concerning the protection of the fish tanks that Eleni introduced it. Okay, what we can do about the protection of fish tanks?
Marco, maybe you should give the microphone to remote.
Yes. Remote speakers, the remote participant.
Yes, David.
Would you like to say something, David?
David, yes, you want.
Could I make one or two general remarks now before we go on to protection? I was very sorry I couldn't take part in the field trip. I've got a few general comments. What is interesting is the number of technical terms in this area quoted by the Roman authors, which come from the Greek words like trapezo, concretis, flattery, from plethora, cataracti, etc. That's an interesting comment. I haven't worked out the implications, but that is an interesting background point. I have wondered in the study of fish tanks, the question remains is in a number of sites, how do they fit into the the harbour state as a whole, and a relationship with other naval installations, for example. I'm conscious here that I've been looking at slipways for warships, mainly for warships, and to talk on that in a joint paper next week. And I still think that your fish tanks, with all the imprecisions and questions that you have, they certainly provide a rather relatively fine you can define the functional elevation very well. A couple of questions though on misinterpretations. It's not just quarries. For one or two sites, the question has been whether fish tanks started as tombs, rock-cut tombs, or became tombs afterwards. This was certainly suggested at Mare, for example, in Crete. It's just another of the misinterpretations. I'm afraid I missed the paper the other afternoon on this one. Sorry, Elaine. And the use of timber. If the timber was normally, if it was in horizontal position, was it always submerged? Clearly some of the vertical posts were not. But if the timber was meant to be below the surface, then this is one of the factors, like with sleepers on slipways, needs to be taken into account in producing sea level evidence for sea level indicators. That is, I think, there are a number of questions about interpreting sites or timber partitions, etc. Were they meant to be below the surface or to go above the surface? That's something where I haven't got a clear impression from listening to the papers on Tuesday, the summary this morning. Thank you, it's been fascinating, thank you. I've been glad to take part, even from a distance. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Can I perhaps suggest, Marco, Marco, can I just suggest that you respond to that first question that David asked about the relativity using the example of entertaining, because that's one of the best places to do this.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay, David, concerning your first question on the relativity and the use of different archaeological sea level markers, it's interesting the case of Ventotene Island. Maybe you know this site, David, and which in the same location exists a quarry, a harbour, a fish tank, which all display sea level indicators that are that are in agreement. So if you compare the crepido of the harbour with the crepido of the fish tank, and if you compare the channel system of the fish tank with the channel system of the harbour that was realized to prevent siltation of the basin, and the elevation of the quarry, and also the bollards of the harbour, it's very interesting case because they are all in agreement and provide a relative sea level change within 20 centimeters. This I think is a perfect case of the coexistence of different markers that provide a reliable information on the relative sea level change. Also because all these part of the harbour are, so the fish tanks and the harbour and so on, have it's the same age, about the same age. And this support very well what you're saying, Kurt, about the calibration. So you can calibrate the elevation of the quarry, for example, or the harbor with respect to the channel system of the fish tank, for example.
Marco, I comment, please. Yes, please. But Ventotene is the island within the Gulf's, the Naples Gulf. No?
No, it's in front of the coast of Lazio. They're not far from Roma, in front of Foggia.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
According to the fish tanks in Crete, it seems that the relative sea level was higher, but so it means that either there was a tectonic subsidence or aerostatic sea level rise. But there are some harbors that are uplifted by a few meters in Crete.
Yes.
Published by Anzidei. So how does this coincide with the fish tank data? I missed the lecture, but maybe someone can tell me.
Thank you. How are you? Well, you are right, yes. The western part of Crete is uplifted. I don't know if you attended the first day's presentation, because there we analyzed the tectonic model of Crete. Western part, Falasarna Harbour and Castelli Kisamu Harbour is uplifted up to 6.15 meters. But the eastern block of Crete is a different block and is subsiding. You are right, but we have highlighted this point. And you give me the chance to make a comment to Paolo Pirazzoli's study for Crete, that he said that the zero for Crete, he did not take into consideration that the entire island had subsided by 1.3 meters, and after the western block was uplifted. So he underestimated the amount of uplift.
Okay, thank you. I just interrupt 1 minute because Flavio Ney, who is the organizer of the meeting, had to go away because he's busy with an excavation in a nearby area. So we want to say something to you.
Thank you all for this workshop. It's very interesting, but I must go away because we are digging in the Gastronome, the ancient Roman colony in this moment, and it's for me it's very, very important to stay on the field today. We are digging a well, very interesting, full of ancient remains. So I must go. They call me. You must come here because they are digging inside the wall. So thank you for your interest for this wonderful workshop, and greetings from PRG. And I wait you here when you stay in Italy to visit the site, our PRG, our museums, and our fish tanks. So have a new day today, and see you again here in PRG. Bye.
Thank you, Flavio. So we can continue.
Marco, actually.
Yes, there is a question by David.
Okay.
So, So David, please. David, you have to turn on your microphone.
Right, can you hear me now? Yes. One question which I forgot earlier. What is the evidence from the fish tanks that men actually excavated rock underwater? Because we've had this debate looking at the skipways. Do you have, those of you who have been studying fish tanks, yeah, have you clear evidence that men did actually have to excavate rock underwater? Thank you. Simple. Difficult question. Very interested in any reactions, if there's still time, from those who study fish tanks.
David, excuse me, you mean the evidence, if you have evidence of the underwater evidence of the of the fish tanks, or rock-cut fish tanks submerged? Yes. Probably Eleni would like to reply to you, because they studied very well the fish tanks, rock-cut in Crete. Eleni, you can hear if you want.
David, the first day, the afternoon, unfortunately you were not there. Leopoldo Franco presented a very interesting subject, how the fish tanks and other maritime installations were made during the Roman period, and he clarified that it was impossible to cut underwater. This presentation will be uploaded, and you will have the chance to watch it. And also he said that this is the reason why Greeks had not fish tanks, because the Roman fish tanks, as you know, are built, and the Romans were casted them than built them. Concerning the cutting of rock underwater, he was absolute that there was no way to cut underwater. Only in periods of low tide you could cut the rock.
Yes, of course.
I don't think we have written evidence for cutting rock under the sea, but we have circumstantial evidence. For example, in Chicmona, we have a rock cut tank, and its bottom is about 2 meters below the present level, the present sea level. Now, in no way sea level during this the Roman period was 2 meters below. So that means that it was cut underwater, or that it was closed and the water were pumped, and then they drive it up and then they cut it. So we have a circumstantial evidence, but not real evidence.
Yes, I agree with you. Also in Ponce Island, the fish tanks of Ponce Island, there are walls built into the water up to the depth about 3 meters.
And Marco, to be precise, Leopoldo said that there is recorded the case of pumping water and construction. So Hood is correct. But in any case, for extensive coastal installation, it is impossible to cut the rock underwater for very extended areas.
Impossible to have a small comment. Regarding Italian fish tank.
It's tectonically stable, so in no way there is a considerable tectonic changes in the last 2,000 years. So if we have a rock cut pool 2 meters under the sea, that means that it was cut under the water or it was dried out at that time.
Regarding the Italian fish tanks, my experience is that in respect of the presentation of Christophe Moran's the other day, it's that the lower crepidine is 1.6 meter above sea level, and my experience from the visiting of the fish tanks is the channel is below the lower fish tanks. This is my remark. It's my remark to see that. Observation to see that.
Thank you. Nikos? David, you want to say something?
I couldn't hear the last speaker. I couldn't hear the name. Could you repeat the name of the site?
Of course. Nikos.
I repeat for Nikos, David. It was, let's say, a conflict between Christophe Moran's and the Italian team that investigated the fish tanks as related to the depth of the channel. Because Pirazzoli and this team has provided lower depths for the fish tanks. And Nikos said that yesterday when we visited and snorkeled all around the fish tanks of Lazio, that the observed depth of the lower crepidine is what the Italian colleagues claim. Because we measured this, it is real, it is truth.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I think that I will share with all the participants the PowerPoint presentations, and I think we can now, I will be in contact with you concerning the preparation of a possible document for the protection of the fish tanks, because we are aware that these hydraulic systems are very relevant as a part of our story, as a part of the story of the Mediterranean, and should be preserved in time for the future, because the anthropic pressure is destroying some of this structure. The construction of new harbor, for example, of touristic resorts and so on, are endangering a lot of these installations, and we need to do something to protect this structure. So I will contact you as soon as possible to share with you a common letter of intent to present to the superintendents of Italy, and this is the same for Greece, for example, and so on, to preserve this interesting and valuable structure from the possible destruction by human activities and by rising sea level in erosion, the coastal erosion in the future. So I want to thank you all for participating in the workshop. So, and I say you all, and ciao from Santa Severa.
Thank you, Marco.